today's talk is not about the new Mass at all. We have discussed that abomination already twice over, and you will find it on other tapes, and you will find it in Father Paul Kramer's excellent book on the theological vindication of Roman Catholic tradition, and you will find it in Father Trincher's excellent book on the same topic. And we have to discuss a great confusion that has taken place in this country with people who say that whoever says the Mass of 1962 does not say the Mass of Pius V. This is a wrong statement. It is coming from self-appointed theologians. Mind you, I have been called a self-appointed theologian too by some priests in this country and by some self-appointed experts. Well, I don't think that a doctorate in theology coming from a Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome, therefore given in the name of the Pope, is self-appointment, but whoever wants to stay believing this, okay. He's not a man or a woman close to the truth. I am not a self-appointed theologian. I was appointed by the Pope indirectly, and I was appointed by the Dean of Theology of the Faculty of Thomistic Theology at the Angelicum in Rome, which is the University of St. Thomas Aquinas, a pontifical university. The doctorate I hold is enough to get the title of professor without having to write another paper. And we have to discuss this because some people think the Society of St. Pius X is gravely wrong by celebrating the Mass of 1962. I will show you why they are not, even though I don't do it. And I will show you why I do not celebrate the Mass of 1962 and why they say the Mass of 1962. Now, first of all, you have to understand that principally the Mass of 1962 is not new. I explained, talking about the Mass of St. Pius V, that Quo Primum is a document binding forever. It binds forever for the simple reason that the legal formula used, the legal formula that says this document cannot be changed and it cannot be abolished ever, it holds forever, is not dealing with disciplinary matters. As the Fraternity of St. Peter and other groups like to point out, the Jesuit order was abolished by Pope Benedict XIV using the same formula. Pope Benedict XIV, in his decree abolishing the Jesuit order, says this decree is in itself unchangeable and it has to stay forever. And they say if this was binding successors, then Pius VII gravely sinned when he reinstituted the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. These people forget that abolishing a religious order is a matter of discipline. It is not a matter of faith. It is certainly not a matter of faith if the Jesuits exist or not. Today it might be better for the faith if they did not exist, but it's not a matter of faith if they exist or not. The Mass, however, due to the oldest principle of Mass, lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of what has to be prayed will determine the law of what has to be believed. Therefore, the Mass is not just a matter of faith, it's the basis of our faith. We do not believe what is not celebrated in Mass, and we believe what is celebrated in Mass. A decree, therefore, ruling over the entire structure of Mass, and not just little details, will certainly bind the successor of the Pope who has issued the decree. How come, then, that some popes after Pius V did some changes? Well, they did not really change the Mass. They modified rubrics, most of the time for the purpose of restoring Mass to what it was. I'll give you an example with what Pius X did. Pius X, in 1907, promoted the rank of Sunday. Before John the 23rd invented a new hierarchy of feasts, the rank of Sunday was semi-duplex. That had something to do with the rules of choir in a monastery. It's not the topic of today, and I have no intention to explain it. Semi-duplex was, the hierarchy was duplex prima classis, something like Easter, or Assumption. Duplex secunda classis, duplex maius, duplex, semi-duplex, and simplex. He promoted the Sunday from semi-duplex to an actual, practical duplex prima classis. That meant, before Pius X did that, many saints would outrank Sundays during the year. let's just for simplicity's sake talk about the Sundays with the green chasuble, per annum. Sundays after Pentecost and Sundays after Epiphany. When Pius X elevated the rank of Sunday, he did this because when in 1570 Pius V published his missal, which is not his and it's not new, as you will see, there were very few saints in the calendar in comparison to today. There was no parish priest of Ars, there was no Saint Teresa of the Little Flowers, because they didn't even live then. There was no Saint Thomas More, who was canonized only in 1935. And so during the summer, very often you would have the Sunday anyway. By the time St. Pius X became Pope, there were summers in which you didn't see the green chasuble once. You always had a feast of a saint outranking Sunday. That's not the purpose. There have to be liturgical times. You cannot have all the saints outranking a Sunday of Lent. You wouldn't see the violet chasuble throughout Lent. You'd always have some white or red chasuble for celebrating a saint or a martyr. So what St. Pius X did was nothing else but restoring the situation that he would have found in 1570. Matter of fact, he improved it in a certain sense, because nowadays it is very difficult to outrank a Sunday. During the summertime, only the Feast of the Assumption will be able to do that. And Pius X knew how a pope should behave. He did not just take the missal and change things, but he wrote up a document which he inserted after the documents of his predecessors who had changed some rubrics. And in this document he explains exactly what I just explained to you. He says that with all the feasts coming, with all the saints, the number of saints growing, Sundays were not what they used to be, and therefore he elevates them now to a practical duplex prima classes. However, St. Pius X's respect for the missal was such that he did not dare to change the name of Sunday. It is still called semi-duplex, even though it has the rank of duplex prima classes. So his respect went to the point of not changing the name even. And this is the way popes have, they want or not, to deal with the Roman Missal. Now there's one thing that has to be understood very clearly. When Pius V published his Missal, he did not publish anything new. The Roman Missal of 1570 is nothing else but the Mass that was celebrated by the Roman Curia 100 years before. And the Missal of 1473 does not contain many changes from the Missal of Gregory the Great. And I have to remind you that the Church sense of tradition in the old days was much, much, infinitely stronger than it was in this century. When in 590-something, Saint Gregory the Great, Pope Gregory the Great, inserted the words Hanc diesque nostros into a pace disponas at the Hanc igitur, the people in Rome were outraged. The clergy was outraged. They confronted the Pope, said, "How dare you touch the canon?" Now this was in 590-something. St. Gregory the Great reigned from 590 to 604. Most of the time he was in bed, sick and disease-ridden. And the sense of tradition in the old days was such that St. Chrysostomus said, "Is it tradition? Ask no more." If it wasn't tradition, they refused it. If it was tradition, they respected it. So Pope Pius V did not proclaim anything or publish anything new. He canonized what he found. When Pope Pius V became Pope, he just canonized what he found. There was nothing new in the Missal of St. Pius V of 1570. He canonized the Mass because he did not give his successors the right to change the Mass ever again. I have explained that, and it's on one of my other tapes too. However, the most important points to remember in this context is that Canon 13 of the 7th session of the Council of Trent on the sacraments in general says that whosoever says that the accustomed and rites handed down in the practice of the sacraments may be held in disdain, or something may be omitted or added to them, or they may be changed into new rites by whomsoever pastor of the church. Mind you, not every pastor. Whomsoever pastor of the church, let him be accursed, whosoever says so. Whomsoever, per quem cumque pastorem ecclesiae. Per quem cumque. Per quem cumque means everybody included. Otherwise, we don't need the Council of Trent to tell us that it's not allowed to every single priest to change the Mass. That was understood all the time. We don't need the Council of Trent for that. I don't need the Council of Trent to know that I'm not allowed to write up my own missal. So what the Council of Trent was saying here, nobody may change the Mass into a new rite. Nobody. Per quem cumque pastorem. And he condemned the opinion, the Council of Trent condemned the opinion that any one of the pastors may do that. The Pope is Bishop of Rome, as a pastor of the churches. He's Archbishop of Latium, that's a pastor of the churches. He's Primate of Italy, that's a pastor of the churches. And he's the Patriarch of the West, that's again a pastor of the churches. And he's also the servant of the servants of God. That makes him a pastor again. He cannot change the old rite into a new one. And until Paul VI of most infelicitous memory, nobody dared to do so. Now what did John the 23rd do? Well, the problem doesn't start with John the 23rd, it starts with Pius XII. Some people are completely hung up with John the 23rd and what John the 23rd did, and always John the 23rd. The first real changes in Mass occurred under Pius XII, when in 1949, ad experimentum for the moment, he approved a new rite for Holy Week. And he approved some things that are, as I say, that went a little bit too far. However, before I explain these changes to you, I have to make something very abundantly clear. I am not the Pope. I cannot pronounce a final judgment on the differences between the Missal of 1949 and the Missal of 1962. Only a Pope in the future will be able to do that. Only a Pope in the future, only a Pope in the future will have the right to do so. So you must understand that as long as I do not quote a council or a Pope, I am speaking my personal opinion as a doctor of theology, and what I say is not necessarily the final answer to the problem. Unless I quote a Pope or a council, I'm as fallible as can be. And that is exactly the reason why I'm always very careful to point out to you what was said by a Pope and what is said by me. Now when I say I do not like these changes, I do not say it in a, let's say, in a licentious way. I have a right to reject what Pius XII did to the Mass, unless a Pope tells me that I must not. The present Pope might tell me this, but however, as he's celebrating an illegitimate rite that is against divine law, he's not the authority to do so, not in this point. That doesn't mean he isn't Pope. We have discussed the question. He is Pope. And how? But only a future Pope who will restore the Mass, the Latin rite, only he will be able to tell me you must not do this or you were right in doing so. I cannot tell any priest, and certainly not the bishops of the Society of St. Pius X, that they must not use the 1962 rite.